my kids learned very early that we had a schedule that rotated every 30 minutes to an hour. We all agreed on the schedule. This was so powerful that they all participated on writing the schedule. And I got to write the things that I needed done in it, and they got to write the fun things that they would like to do in it. So nobody was on we only had one computer, so nobody was sharing the computer. You got your time on the computer, and then you rotate it. But we would set a timer, and we'd hit the bell, and off they go, and then they would go, what's next after 1 hour? And they go look at their schedules that were all laid out in the kitchen, and they hit the bell and they go to the next ones. And I got really smart in there that I would book 30 minutes with each child to do stuff with mom one-on-one, and 30 minutes with their dad. And that's 2.5 hours of our time. Everything else they could do on their own.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of MomSub, the childcare app that connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. And today, I'm with Debbie Simmons. Debbie is the creator of the Architecture of Trust, a consulting service for faith-driven leaders to design their legacies. She spent 15 years running the nonprofit Anchor Point, where she started to provide programs to help families overcome trauma. Debbie began her career more than 30 years ago as an engineer and has also worked as a sales trainer, a marketing consultant, a minister. Wow, you've done so much, Debbie. Thank you for being here.
It sounds like a lot.
It is a lot. Be proud of that. You have done all these different things. And I wonder if that was sort of the path you intended, or if you encountered some obstacles and maybe had to adjust. We want to talk about some of the barriers. And I want to start by asking you what you think has been the biggest challenge in your career, specifically because you are a woman.
Okay, so there was about 6 questions there, so let me try and get them. But I would say, from the perspective, there's two things that have always been a challenge for me. Is one, most of my life I have spent growing up in male-dominated fields, whether it was umpiring baseball as a girl, mechanical engineering, and being one of only two women in a big program, and then, going into engineering and working in that field, then leaving that, going to seminary is pretty male dominated. Startups a lot of times are male dominated. And so I would just say, hey, one of the things that it served me well is that as I went into male dominated fields, one is I knew my stuff. I knew how to be successful in those arenas. Baseball, I knew the rules better than a lot of the guys that were my age, and just little things like that because, and I could walk with, I didn't really understand it then, but I could walk with confidence that I was competent in what I was being called to do. And so that has served me well to go, hey, lift up your shoulders, your stuff, walk with it, because most women don't enter in these male dominated markets where we don't know our stuff. We know it because we wouldn't even enter it if we didn't know it, because we are going to prepare ourselves. And so that has served me really well. And then another thing that has served me really, really well is we are going to all run into challenges. We're going to always run into challenges. It doesn't matter where we're working, what kind of mom we are, there will always be pressure. And, one of the things I had to learn very early on was to lay down the question of why and know that I did not have to have an answer for it this side of heaven. Because why, it's one thing if it's like why, and I'm trying to solve a problem and I'm trying to fix that. But, for me, I lost children very early in my relationship with my husband. And when I did, I really wanted the answers to that. Right? Like, why did it have to be me? And why my boys? And why this? And why? And that is a stuck question for me as a mom, for me as a woman, and for me as a leader. Okay, I cannot do anything with that question because even if God Himself would have shown up, and given me the answer, I would have said, why? Because that ain't good enough, right? It doesn't solve the pain. It doesn't, bring my boys back. It doesn't do any of that. So I had to learn to lay that question down and be okay with it, not getting that answer, and learning to ask a different question. How do I survive? And that was take my next best step and do that over and over and over and over again. And then as I got better, I learned the question of not how do I survive, but how do I thrive? And how do I take this tragedy, this difficult situation, and let it be used for God's glory, for, my future success, for impact on other people? And that learning has stayed with me for decades. And it's still the same thing as CEO. Something comes up and I want to naturally go, why? And then I have to go, okay, I got to put that aside. How do I survive it? How do I thrive? And that has been the key to success for me through the years with all the different things that I've faced.
Wow, Debbie, I'm so sorry. I see why you may have been inspired to start a nonprofit that helps people with trauma. And
Yeah.
so we are a society that asks why. And sometimes we're a society that asks why not, right? That's why we're the strongest, freest
Yep.
country in the world, most people think. So it's natural for our listeners to want to know what happened, Debbie. This sounds like a horrific experience. Can you recount for us what you went through?
Yeah, no, we had always wanted to have children, and I knew I had infertility issues, and it took us about 5 years to get pregnant. We were pregnant with twins. I attempted a miscarriage, ended up in the uh, high risk doctor's office, and he told me I was pregnant with quads. And every day became a miracle to make it to the next day. And the boys the goal was 30 weeks. The boys, we made it to 26 weeks when my water broke. And then they put me in the hospital, and the first one was born at 26 weeks. And they placed a little Zach in my arms, and I rocked him and I held him as till he drifted into eternity. And then my body got very sick and couldn't handle the other three, and I had to induce, and I did it over again and over again and over again. And that is where I sat that night when I had to learn to lay that question down because I didn't want to be stuck forever.
So you lost all four.
Yeah. Yeah, it was about 32 years ago, and the boys, technology today would save those babies.
Oh,
And it just was not available then. And while it's a experience I wouldn't wish anybody to go through, it was a journey that has ultimately been a blessing as we've walked through it and grown and stretched, and the impact that my boys' legacy continues to have through the nonprofit and through the work that we get to do. And I'll be with them in eternity, and that'll be a short time from now.
and you did not go on to have any other children.
We did about 6 or 7 years later,
Oh,
try to have children, but I just wasn't up for it. So we have adopted 9 children with trauma backgrounds. So we've done adoption 3 different times, and now I have 15 with the 16th grandbaby on the way.
oh my gosh, what a journey, Debbie. So you had this um horrific trauma that you experienced that you let not define you in a negative way, but help you to see life in a new way. And you then realized that your body was not going to bear the children you thought it was, but that didn't mean you couldn't be a mother. And you adopted 9 children, and now you said 15, so you have 6 grandkids?
15 grandchildren with
Oh,
a 16th on the way.
so you have 15 grandchildren and
Ah,
9 grown children. And so
ah.
you went through being a mother, and through all of this, you wanted to maintain a career. You started in engineering, but that changed I want to hear about, what caused these different changes in your life. Was it the things that you were learning as life gave you these, very tough obstacles to overcome that adjusted the career path you took?
Yeah, nothing is a straight line, I've decided. Everything that I have personally gone, okay, I want to go from A to Z, and I have this plan, it never works out that way. It's always this zigzag thing that I'm like, okay, well, somehow I got there. But when I was after I lost the boys, I was still working as an engineer, and I really felt like God was leading me into pursuing ministry type options. So that led to leaving that, going into seminary and getting a degree there, and then beginning to work on church staffs. And I did. I worked with Chuck Colson at Prison Fellowship for about 5 years, running prison ministry in different states. And what it actually comes down to is as I learned to ask the question, how do I thrive? I basically said, okay, God, you're a redeemer of stories. You take my story and you redeem this story. And you use it to help people and everything like that. And as I did that, he began to open up all these crazy opportunities. So that's where being on the church staff, then moving and working with Prison Fellowship, and then helping a doctor start up his business. And then God was like, start this ministry. And I'm like, okay, you're kidding me. I got 7 kids in the house and it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. And he's like, do it. And I'm like, oh my word. And I just finally relented and said, okay, I'll do it. And it's been a wonderful ride. And now, it serves literally thousands of families every year. It's a multi-million-dollar business. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And now God lets me consult with other CEOs and train them up and do all that type of stuff. And all those things are just opportunities that he continues to give me as I'm faithful with the resources that I have, and to do what I've been asked to do. So, how can I make that kind of impact?
Wow. So you started adopting and you adopted babies? Uh,
No, no, I didn't do it that way. I decided, my husband and I decided that we did not want to have anybody in diapers.
okay. So
So
you
we adopted,
adopted
yeah,
preschoolers or kids in elementary school?
yeah, so my first adoption was a sibling group of 5. They were 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then 8 years later, a sibling group of 2, and they were 11 and 13. And then my others were 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then 3 years after that, we got a 9-year-old and 11-year-old brother and sister. And then my other ones were 13, 15, 16, 17, all the way up to 21. So now they're 34, down to 21. And so it's never quiet.
That's for sure. So when you made this big decision to adopt and then you actually took that step and became a mother,
Mhm.
did you at that point say, I'm going to step aside from the career, whatever that career was, or did you say, I'm going to continue to work, be a working mom? You said you had, when you first adopted, you went from no kids to 5 kids
Yeah, to a basketball team.
overnight. And you kept your career and the job you were doing. Was it full time? Did you
Yeah.
adjust at all?
This is really funny. It was full time, okay. And this is the funniest story is we'd been married 11 years and we were kind of set in our ways too, right? Because we just kind of did our thing as a couple. And when these kids moved in, I remember the very first day they were there, the youngest one, he was 6. He comes, it's a basketball team, so they go play. They're easy, because they're all siblings. And so he comes in running in and he looks up at me and I'm looking at him and he goes, what's for dinner? And I look at this kid and I'm going, do you ask this every day? Because I am not ready for this. Because I didn't really cook. And so, fortunately, I had an organizational management degree that allowed me to put systems in place and do all this stuff to get this chaos under control. But he was so cute. And I just was like, I am in over my head. And I did work full time. I was on staff at a church at the time, and they were very gracious. But the other challenging thing was when these children first moved into our home was we were in South Carolina, and my husband works for NASA, and they required him to move back to Texas. And so we couldn't move until the adoption was finalized. So he left me, and now I'm a single mom with 5 kids and working a job. And, fortunately, I had very gracious friends that helped us. And these kids were, even with their trauma backgrounds, I find sibling groups are a little easier to handle because you can see kind of how they relate. And these kids had foster parents who were absolutely wonderful with them. I did it for 6 months on my own, and he would come back about every third week or so. And we made it. And then we all moved to Texas.
Wow. And did you consider stepping back, telling the church, I think I need to focus on these 5 kids or go part-time? Did you have a lot of flexibility to come and go, to work from home, before that was a thing? How did you make that work? Because most women out there would probably feel bad. Oh my gosh, I have 2 kids and I'm barely keeping my head above water. How did she do it? And she seemed so calm about it.
Well, I did not leave my job. I stayed full time. They were very gracious in, giving me the time that I needed to make adjustments that I needed to do. And we had good, one of the things I always tell adoptive families is make sure you have a good support network that can help you figure your way with these children. And we just incorporated a system pretty fast, right? That organizational management degree, and my kids were wonderful. Uh, and we had issues and dealt with all those types of things, but I did keep working. Was I tired? Sure. But I did not feel like God was telling me at that point to stay at home from that perspective. So
But at that point, you had not started your nonprofit,
no,
correct?
I was working full time on a church staff. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so, what led to you starting a nonprofit and then running it all those years? Obviously, you were inspired to help others with trauma, but besides that, in even being called to do it, the actual doing of it, that's a whole nother thing, right? So,
Yeah.
not just what led to it, but how did you make it happen without feeling like this is too much for me?
To be honest, I have no idea how I survived all this. But now that you're making me talk about it, I'm like, I don't know how I did that. But I did at the time we had adopted a second time, so I had 7 kids. And granted, they were 11 through 18, so they're a little easier to manage, from that versus preschoolers and elementary kids. And they were very involved in helping us start it. But the truth of the matter is that what I find with anything that we want to accomplish, I literally, that thing I learned when I lost my boys, take the next best step. Because when I felt like I was called to do it, I'm like sitting there going, I don't have any idea how to do a nonprofit. I've never done it before. And so I had a friend that was willing to kind of partner alongside of me, and we would just sit there and go, okay, what's the next thing we should do? Okay, we should incorporate. Okay, well, how do you do that? Okay, let's do that. And so we did that. And then we were like, okay, we got to file for tax exempt status, do the 501(c)(3). And so we filled that out and sent it in, and it got accepted. Then you have to tell people that you have this crazy dream of something that you want to do, right? It's not like selling books or selling widgets or whatever. I got to tell people I have this crazy dream and I want you to buy into the dream and invest your money for potentially no return on your part. Okay. And I'm like, would you like to dream with me? And we just started talking, and it was amazing because we took positive steps forward and held loosely to our dream. We let God kind of dictate, what doors were open or closed and which way we should kind of go. And he was faithful in all of that. I could tell you the 501(c)(3) came through in 90 days exactly. That's the shortest it can ever come through. No rejections, no nothing. And it was during a time when nonprofits were having trouble getting those approved in the government. And it came straight back, and we talked to a bunch of pastors, and they said, oh, we'd be supportive of it, not money wise, but we'd send volunteers and people to utilize the service. And I was like, okay. And then we had a meeting with about 200 people and just said, here's this crazy idea. And people were like, yeah, this is great. And I'm like, what are we doing? Okay. And so we did the next thing. And then next thing you know, we found a location, and then people started coming. And then we're sitting there, and I'm going, maybe we should do some education stuff. Okay, let's figure it out. That is exactly how we built it. And I still run that today, along with do the other things that I get to do. But it's just amazing the impact in the lives. And there are children that are, 16 years old that are taller than me that I go, oh, you're here because of that ministry. And that just gets you excited. So I would say, hey, when you see the impact, that gives you a lot of energy to keep going. And it is important, as I've done this stuff, is it's important to learn to know where our limits are and to know that we need to recharge and take care of ourselves. And so that we can be the people that can be present. Because about 5 years ago, I got an injury in my leg that wouldn't heal. And I realized that, oh my gosh, external stress, internal stress, raising 9 children with hard backgrounds, all this stuff was piling on to me. And I wasn't taking care of me as well as I should. And my injury wouldn't heal, and it got a staph infection. And what I noticed was in the ministry itself, we began to see cracks. And the cracks were because I had operated at the heroic and I had my finger holding all the water that's trying to come out of the bucket. And it just revealed that, hey, we have got to strengthen the structure so it's not dependent on a heroic leader, right? And that is what we've been doing over the last 6 years, which is the architecture of trust that's coming out in a new book, to talk about, hey, how as executive leaders, we can set ourselves up for success and set our organizations up to thrive well past us. Because I go, wouldn't it be cool? I get anchor point to the place that it's still impacting people, even as I, the founder, move on and do that for decades to come. And so, um, yeah, balance is, we got to find balance. And I think your question is a good one, is I don't know. I just found the way to do it. That's the best answer I got.
I can see how one led to another, led to
Yeah.
another. So when you started Anchor Point, when you first started going down that road of, well, I want to do this, and I guess we just file for a 501(c)(3), did you make a physical step to tell the ministry where you were working full time, I'm leaving, I'm going to devote my time to this? Or did you do it as a side hustle and add another thing to your plate?
Well, it was really funny. I was I really felt like God was leading me to do it. And I kept telling him no. I was like, heck no. That's going to take too much time, too much money, too much energy. No, 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 no. Go get someone else. And he was like, no, it's you. And I'm like, no, no, no. And this went on for a while. And my job at Prison Fellowship uh, went away in a week and it disappeared. Okay. And it was a very painful. And as soon as the dust settled, God was like, do you have time now? And I was like, I guess so. I'll do what you say now. I'll be obedient. And during that time, I actually ended up helping a doctor start up his practice. And while I was doing that, we were filing the paperwork and starting the different things that we needed to do. And the paperwork piece doesn't really take a lot of time. It just is like you got to figure it out. And that wasn't too bad. But once we started serving people, then there became a time where it just became too much. And I walked away from helping that doctor and said, hey, I'm going to do this. But when I started helping him, I went in with this concept of, I'll help you because I have some bandwidth right now. And financially, it's a good thing for us. But I'm starting this ministry and that's my highest priority. And so at some point, we're going to part ways. And he was and is a very good donor to the ministry still today. So we're still really good friends from that perspective.
So when you start a nonprofit, you have nothing, right? You have a name usually and maybe some helpers and no
Yep.
money. And of course you raise money, but
Mhm.
did you design it so that you could hire people, so that you could pay yourself? How long did it take you? For others who may say, I'm called to do something, but I'm worried. I have a, family I have to take care of. How long did it take where you were able to pay yourself and then a salary maybe even that was equivalent to what you used to do, or maybe that never even happened?
Great question. And I'm going to be honest, is that the initially the cost is high for whoever does it. Time, money, all that stuff. I knew that going in. And for the first, my goal was never to work full time in the ministry. My goal was to just be on the board. And so we hired someone initially and another part-time person to start the ministry. She wanted to be a grandma, and so she transitioned out pretty quickly as she got her ability to have grandkids and all this good stuff. And then we were sitting there, and my friend and I kind of looked at each other and said, "Okay, who's going to do it?" No one holds the passion as much as we do. And I told her she could do it, and she said, "You need to do it." And so we eventually landed on me need to do it. And so I did it. And for the first about 3 years, I would work without pay, and I would also write checks out of my personal bank account to cover whatever payroll there was. And so there were plenty of times that I called my husband and I said, "Dude, I just wrote a $5,000 check. Do not spend any money." And he would say, "Okay." And then his next question would be, "Is there money in the bank?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I didn't look." And the reason is because I'm going, "God, this is your ministry and this is your money. You figure it all out." And we have never been destitute or broke. And we've always had our needs met. And so I did that. So I was super excited when we got to a point where I didn't have to write checks anymore. And then we could pay me a little bit. And then one of the things that I know for the ministry to survive, we cannot underpay these key positions because let's say I was to leave, if you're not paying me at a rate that I've got to go hire someone at, it's a disservice to the ministry. And so we have worked really hard over the years to get the salaries in line with what would be out there that we would, if we had to go hire someone. And so our salaries are in line and we've done really good over the years. And so we wouldn't have a problem replacing any staff person at this point. But the first 3 years, and it's interesting when you're talking to donors, when you're starting something like that, their first response is, "Oh, that's great. Let's see if you make it." And they don't give very much money. I'm like, "What?" And so at around year 3 was when things really began to open up and people would say, "Oh, you're going to make it." Because most startups don't make it even out of the first year, right? And then they don't make it 5 years, and then they don't make it 10 years. And I'm like, "I told you I was going to be here." And so now I can say, "This is year 16. We're still here." So, but to get a lifelong donor, it's a 3-year process. So,
Wow, phenomenal achievement. And so you are still the CEO, getting
yeah.
paid as a CEO. So tell me, how many people do you have on staff? Are they full-time or part-time? How many people have you helped over the years?
Yeah, so we generally service about 3,000 plus people a year in the ministry every year, and staffers. I don't know the exact number right this second because we just have a contract that is expanding what we're doing, but I think I have about 18 or 20 that are full time. And then we have probably 10 or so that are part time. And then we have probably about 50 regular volunteers that are volunteering on a daily basis. And then we have additional ones that come in and do one-off things or events and stuff like that. So we're always trying to use our volunteers in our community because we know we can expand our impact, and that is one of the major objectives of each staff member is how can we utilize our volunteers to expand what we do. So that's about the size right now. That I think that's about the size of the staff.
Wow, that's quite an achievement to grow it like that. So tell me how it evolved, because so many people want to start a business or a nonprofit, and it's similar, not the same, but
Right.
similar. And you have an idea of how things are going to go, and they don't always go that way. Like you said, it's never a straight line. How did it change and evolve from what you thought your original vision was, or stay true to it? And what kinds of pivots did you have to make in order to survive that long?
Yeah, so I would say for me, I hold lightly to the dreams that God has given me. So I'm okay if we have to kind of go this way and then back this way, trusting that He is going to lead us in that. But I would say what we did was we knew we had a kind of a napkin that we drew the stuff on, and I just put that to the side and I went, "Okay, what's the first thing we're going to do?" And the thing that we wanted to do, the door kept closing on. And so we
What was
pivoted.
that?
I wanted to start with working with kids that were adopted and helping those families and doing maybe placement. And that door kept closing. So we started with young women who were finding out they were pregnant and they didn't know what to do. And they were overwhelmed and scared and they were trying to figure their way. So we started there. And it was okay because it was just a little different, but we're like, okay, let's go over here. And this is where people are coming to us, people are sending them to us, and let's begin. And then what we did was we said, okay, what are the needs that we need to meet? And we had a lot of wonderful mentors that are doing this type of stuff across the country that are very gracious to give us ideas and thoughts. And they would plant seeds of here's how we laid out our stuff. You can lay it out similarly. And we would start making those layouts and then we'd go, that's not working for us. So let's change that thing and let's do this thing instead. And we just began, in my mind, do whatever you're going to do, fail fast and fail forward, right? And I'm like going, because life is about learning and you can't learn without falling apart sometimes. And so it's okay. And what we found was, hey, we don't want to do everything for this young woman. We want to do it with this woman because if I do it for her, then she does not feel empowered. If I do it with her, then we're raising her up to be the parent that she needs to be. And, it's pretty easy. If you ask parents, kids don't come with instruction manuals. So they are the instruction manuals. So there's a lot to learn, right? And we just started adding in the classes. We added in the medical support. We added in determined what resources were in our area. And we just began to build each piece of that. And then once we I had a person in my life that would call me every month, and they were a church that was supportive of us. And this gentleman, he would call me and he would go, Miss Debbie, would the ministry survive without you if you weren't there? And this is from the very beginning. And I would go, nope. Nope, nope. And he'd call every month. And there were times I would go, you know what? This part would be okay. But this part still needs me. And so what I had to learn was I had to learn that my biggest job was to work on the business versus in the business. And my job was to figure out how to recruit staff or volunteers to take over responsibilities so that I could be free to work on it. So I've always built that way. And it's very interesting. A girl that started with me, she started at the front desk and then we hired her and I was like, okay, who's your client now? And she would say, the client's in the room. And I would like, nah, yours are now the volunteers. And the volunteers are with the clients in the room. She was like, and it took her a long time to make that shift. And then she got promoted. And I was like, hey, who is your clients now? And she was like, the volunteers. I was like, nope, it's the staff. It's your staff that report to you that now have the volunteers under them. And I'm like, you're all, and our biggest challenge for every staff member is how do you structure what you're doing to work your way out of all of your responsibilities? Because we want to reach more people, we want to conquer more land, we want to do more things, and we cannot do it unless we are building the structure to allow us to be free to do it. And so I go, as long as you're stuck, like if that young lady would have been stuck in a client room, she can see, I don't know, 4 people a day. She can help 15 people. If she has a staff of 3 and we have 20 volunteers, then now we can see 80 people a week. And so I think it's important for us to learn what we need to do. And only as we get bigger, more people, but only I can really look at the health of the whole organization. And I'm the one that has the vision, and I can only provide the vision. So my deal now is vision, vision, vision. Where are we going next? Structure, structure, structure. What does it take for us to be able to do this and for each of us to be able to continue to move and grow? And leadership is aligned, decisions are clear, and we can execute reliably. And our organization can move and move quickly and not be stuck in the bog of, you know, things have come back to my desk and I'm like going, why is that on my desk again? I don't understand. And that's what slows us down. So that's how we built and tried to expand and grow. And I don't think that's any different for my business or a business that is a fee for service type thing.
I agree. Yes, what you're describing is very typical for a lot of startups. And you have the the time and the focus with your kids being grown. Of course, you have grandkids and you have grown kids and you have a large family, but it's different than when they're running around at home. When you first had that all of a sudden, 5 years old to, 9-year-old brood kind of move in and ask you what's for dinner. What kind of help did you have? Did you, the kids were in school, but in the summer they probably weren't. After school, you may have still been at the church doing your administrative work. So how did you deal with childcare? Even if you had assistance, sometimes it's not consistent in the way that it can be if you go out and you say, I need to get this piece in place. Did you think about that in advance or figure it out sort of after they came along? And what did you do and did that change over time of how you were able to get help for them?
Yeah, so you definitely have to be very structured, very organized, and have a plan. And it's so funny that you say I don't have little kids running around my house because right this second I have five under six running around right this second.
And no one else there to help you?
Oh, my daughter's in the other room, but she has left it like very difficult relationship and she's got three and one of my sons has two more and they're all like going crazy. And I'm going, I've never had this many little ones. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, you better get a plan. Because I'm like, I can't handle this, and we got to have a plan. So the fact that you guys haven't heard them yet is a win. So we're doing good, but it means when we look at like these little kids that are here, man, their attention spans are 15 minutes at the tops. So
15
literally,
seconds, right?
we write a schedule for every 15 minutes.
Uh,
Uh, and it's downstairs, and the kids know exactly what they're doing, how they're transitioning, and everything. And one of the coolest things that I got because I had a lot of flexibility to still be at home. And when they were home in the summers, a lot of times we did camps and different things like that. But when they were home, my kids learned very early that we had a schedule that rotated every 30 minutes to an hour. We all agreed on the schedule. This was so powerful that they all participated on writing the schedule. And I got to write the things that I needed done in it, and they got to write the fun things that they would like to do in it. So nobody was on we only had one computer, so nobody was sharing the computer. You got your time on the computer, and then you rotate it. But we would set a timer and we'd hit the bell, and off they go. And then they would go, what's next after 1 hour? And they go look at their schedules that were all laid out in the kitchen and they hit the bell and they go to the next ones. And I got really smart in there that I would book 30 minutes with each child to do stuff with mom one on one and 30 minutes with their dad. And that's 2.5 hours of our time. Everything else they could do on their own. Okay, as long as they were kind of supervised. But that gave me the rest of the time, I'm marching and hearing them, but I could do the work that I needed to do. And they got the loving that they needed and the encouragement and stuff like that. And then we threw in wild cards because schedules change. And when schedules change, you've got to be able to handle it. And so, how are we going to handle it? And how are we going to swap this up? And if we have to do something difficult, let's put something fun behind it. So, this is where a lot of my trauma training came in very helpful is to help kids, understand what their schedules are going to be, get rhythms, and to be able to figure out how to make their way in this world. And, just this morning, I had one of the grandchildren that was having a complete meltdown and it was over a cup. I'm like, dude, we got to figure out how to get back on track. And how are we going to do it? How can I help you? And let's figure this out because we cannot have you crying all day. And you're 7. I mean, he's 6. I'm like, you're 6. We can't do this all day. And we got it back on track. But he had a misunderstanding with his mother, and he thought she was being mean, and she didn't understand him. And I'm like, well, let's redo it and let's get it fixed and let's keep going. And so we did. And so that, of course, is what we did. And that's how I did it all through their years growing up. And that schedule thing was wonderful for
wow.
them. And
You
for
should
me.
create an app around that. That sounds like, very structured and the kids bought into it. That's great. Now, you mentioned that, they had this one-on-one time with you and with your husband separately, and then they were off on their own, but supervised. So who was
Mhm.
providing that supervision? Did you have family in the home to help with that?
Sometimes I had people, but most of the time I could supervise it. I mean, I wasn't shut up in a room and we were all in general areas. So if you had computer time, you were over here. If you were doing schoolwork, you were over there. I mean, and I could, they always go, how do you hear me? And I'm like, I don't know. I just have really good ears.
So
Um,
you'd be doing your work while they were doing their thing, and you were doing your work from home at that point. You
yeah,
had that
at that point.
flexibility, and because you had them sort of focused on their tasks and their structure and their schedule, generally you weren't constantly feeling like, you had to be at their beck and call and give them a snack whenever. Well, that'll come in an hour,
Right.
or
They knew
whatever.
they knew it was an hour, but we also on the snacks and food because you never want anybody to go hungry. We have acceptable food that you could access at any time that was in a special place. And so you knew how to take care of yourself. Like if you wanted an orange or a yogurt, you knew what the food was that you could have at any time. So you try and think through all those things, and guess what? When the pressure goes up and it doesn't work, make adjustments. That's what we did.
Wow, you had a great organization. That sounds almost like the military, you
Yeah.
know? And
Well,
so these parents that struggle, this may be a key for them to really have
yeah.
that kind of an organization in place. Because you had no choice, I guess, when you had that many. It was either that or it would have just been chaos and you wouldn't have been able to certainly work full time, and do all the other things you wanted to do. Yeah.
But they would have taken me. They would have gotten me. But I think large families are always that way. And the larger the family is, the more organized and structured you have to be. And it's not about, and kids thrive with the right amount of structure and the right amount of nurture. So it's not that we didn't have the nurture, but for kids that come from trauma backgrounds, structure is so important. And so this is a lot of what we do in our therapeutic camps with families. I can't tell you, every family that comes to camp, I talk about the schedule, they're like, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard of. And I'm like, yeah, it'll save you. But the kids love it because they get to participate in making it. And when my kids were young and they would go to their grandparents, and my parents would let them do whatever. When they get there, every morning they wake up, they're like, what's the schedule? And my dad's like, what schedule? And they're looking for it because then they know how to operate, right? And they're going, we can figure our way. And when you can figure your way, you feel empowered. And that's what they, for these kids, that's so important in a trauma kind of background for them to know and to feel safe, is what that is. So I would say anyone that has kids, even if you have one or two, it is empowering for them to have a schedule. It's no different than if you and I don't need a schedule because we are writing the schedule and we have control. If someone bigger than us was making my schedule but not telling me, and then I had to jump around and go do whatever they said, I personally would go, excuse me, that's not working for me. Okay, our kids can't say that. And so this is, they'll misbehave or whatever. And so this is a way to bring them along.
Wow, it gives them a sense of autonomy and control, like you said, and just a sense of security, knowing what's next. So, not having to say, when are we going here or can we do this? It's all part of the schedule. That's so beautiful that you not only created that for your family, but now you share it with so many other families. You've done all these different things and achieved so much, followed, the calling that drew you to things you thought you weren't even ready for. But if there was a time that you could go back to, knowing then in the past what you know now, what's something you would change?
Oh, well, first of all, anything in the future, I don't even ask anymore. I'm like, okay, God, whatever you want me to do, just tell me the next step because I don't know what it's going to be like. But I think what I would, if I was talking to my younger self, I think I would tell myself to relax and enjoy the moment more. Not that I was still wouldn't get all these things done, but I don't need to be as intense as I am. My kids go, "You're intense." And that's just because I'm very focused and very driven, right? And so I think to laugh more, to enjoy the time that we have, and to celebrate the moment. So like these children, grandchildren that are in my home now, that wasn't on the radar 2 weeks ago. They just showed up. And I'm like, I can be frustrated by that, or I can go, this is my time with them. Let's figure it out. And let's play and let's have fun. And am I having to adjust my schedule? Yeah. Am I getting much less sleep? Yes. Is the washer available when I want it? No. You know. So I'm learning all those things, but they're a lot of fun. And I want them to smile, and I enjoy smiling with them. And so I think that that is the thing that I would say, don't miss it while they're young too.
You're a little less intense now and kind of reminding others that we don't have to be as intense.
Mhm.
Sometimes they say, think about, how much is this going to matter in 5 years, right? That cup that's bothering you or the meltdown that your kid's having, right? And so that can help us take that step back. I thank you for all of these insights and lessons and guidance that you've really shared today on this episode of Women and Work. If you were inspired by today's story, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you or anyone you know is struggling to find the right childcare, just submit your criteria and watch a video interview with the ideal nanny who fits your family at momsub.com. That's mom sub, like a substitute mom. Our mission is for you to get the help you need so you can discover what you want in life, pursue it with intensity, and fulfill your dream, reducing your stress, guilt, and self criticism, and increasing your calm, confidence, and clarity along the way. Remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. So keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.